Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. Okay, here we go. Are we letting them listen in on this, Karl?
Sure. We've already been recording, right?
Yeah. I don't do all of it, but I write a lot of the materials that we send our readers. So every week they get an email, for example, that says, this week you should be reading books 1 and 2 of Aristotle's Politics. As you read this, you might think about so-and-so. So I just wrote up the materials for Aristotle's Politics, and Aristotle describes revolution, and he has his own definition of revolution that's probably a little different than ours. I think that when we think of revolution, we think about Lexington and Concord, Cornwallis and Yorktown, and that kind of thing, like a shooting thing, and guillotines in 1799 France. His is very different, and his is just about something that changes the character of the government.
Yes.
And the things that can change the character of the government are actually quite small, but through the fullness of time, it ends up being revolutionary. And I wrote an email and I said, what does revolution mean to Aristotle?
Yeah.
And then I said, how many Aristotelian-style revolutions have taken place in the United States since July 5th of 1776? Now, Karl, when I sent that to you, I said I count at least 9.
Yeah.
I'm up to 12.
Did you add Elvis?
No, I haven't added Elvis yet. That was a bad deal.
That's 13.
1976, I think.
I don't mean him dying. I mean him on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, well, maybe. 1789, overthrow of the Articles of Confederation. 1792 to 1856. It took all that time for all of the states to remove their property-owning qualification for voting.
Mm-hmm.
It was state by state, and it took all that time. So if you remove, maybe it should have been removed. I'm not arguing for or against it, but if you remove a property ownership qualification to vote, the electorate changes.
Yeah, it's a different sort of a thing.
It's a different sort of a thing. And since we are to some degree governed by the voters, then the government has changed. Maybe it should have happened. I'm actually not agnostic about that, but for the purposes of this, let's say that it's okay. 1861, negation of voluntary and free association of the states. 1913, change of the U.S. precedent of non-involvement in European conflict. We were no longer isolationists. 1913 again, the 17th Amendment. Before the 17th Amendment, your state legislature would elect your senator.
Yes.
So the Senate really represented states' rights instead of people. That's the default.
Right.
Well, they changed that, and then that became the popular election. So you now vote for your senator, but it used to be your House of Representatives in your state would do it. I believe it was the House. 1920, 19th Amendment. Ladies can vote. Maybe that's awesome. Maybe it's not awesome, but it darn sure changed things. So on and on and on. And so I've come to think, Karl, to your point about the we're in this sort of Marxist revolution. 1963 to about 1971 was a color revolution in the United States, and we are just continuing to play out that whole fallout.
Mm-hmm. I want to take back one word. I don't want to just blame it all, or blame is probably the wrong word too. It's just been revolutionary times for a long, long time, and Marx is one of them.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't do us a lot of service to just say it's a Marxist movement, because it's not just a Marxist movement. A lot of it's just plain old Dewey-style American progressivism. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I see it all the time. For me, it's like a key to understanding. I don't really want to talk about current events unless they force themselves on us, but it's a way for me to understand what goes on is when you turn the key and say, oh, it's revolution. Okay, now it makes sense to me that things are promoted. Well, why are they promoted? Because they're revolutionary. They're overturning things. That's what revolution means in Latin. It's overturning.
Revolving.
That helps you understand a lot of things. I think, so we were going to do this book, if we ever get to it, Leisure, the Basis of Culture.
I'm not going to let us get there yet. Americans are revolutionary. I mean, we were born of that. We love the technology. We love change. We're the babies of the Industrial Revolution. Here, change, and I want to make the air quotes, progress are held up as just to be virtuous. I mean, just period. Just as a category, change and progress are just virtuous. And so almost any time Americans go to the polls, they're going to act for change and for this progress. They just can't help it. It's just in our character.
Yeah.
And so almost every time we go vote, it's a changing thing. It's a revolutionary thing. And half of the country's shocked by the outcome almost every time.
I am going to drag us back to the book because I think it's the exact the response to it, right? So my response to change slogans is always, change? Aren't things bad enough already?
Mm-hmm.
Standing authority history saying, stop. Well, stop at least and catch your breath. What is progress for? That's the big question. What is progress for? What's the purpose of being a human being? And this goes all the way back with the books that we're preoccupied with. It goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks. What is a man? What is he here for? What is the characteristic activity of a human being?
Mm-hmm.
And should we do it well? If I know that, then I know what progress is. And all the revolutions that you named, maybe they're actual progress and maybe they're not. Okay? But how do we judge that?
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we said what the stated goals were?
Mm-hmm.
Increase the franchise. Okay, fine. So that what will happen? I kind of don't like voting, Karl. I think it's oppressive. You know, I'm a guy... People aren't going to like this. Email Scott at Online Grade. I think it's oppressive. You know, my local government does a lot of stuff, from storm drains to roads to some schooling. They operate a transportation system, all kinds of stuff. And I'm expected to know about it and make good decisions about it. And I don't take that stuff lightly, you know. So if I'm going to go vote, I've got to read up on a whole bunch of things. And I've got to be good at it. I mean, I really can't be, because I've got to do a podcast with Karl on leisure, the basis of culture, you know?
Guess what? You know what people practically do is that they don't care about any of that stuff. They get distracted by the big ticket popular vote national election.
Yep.
And they don't know who their state representative is.
Right.
Where it was, and that's the change in the flavor of what the thing was. You were supposed to know your state representative and your state senator. They were supposed to be people from your town. That's the stuff you're voting on. You trust them. They're the ones that are supposed to vote for your senator, and the Electoral College, which is supposed to vote for the president, is not supposed to be you. You're supposed to care about the potholes in your street because you know about them.
The Aristotelian style series of revolutions has brought about that change.
Yeah, so it's upside down right now.
Yeah. For
better or for worse.
Yeah. It ain't the way it was.
Yeah. And so one thing that you can do by considering, we want to know for the sake of, what are we progressing for? There's an answer in this book that we read for this week. So Pieper says it's all for the sake of leisure.
Yeah, this week we have read Leisure, the Basis of Culture by one Josef Pieper, Josef. He's a German gentleman. Pieper, Pieper. He's such a good writer. I'm reading him in the English instead of his German, but he's such a good writer, and he can really lay it on you in about 50 pages. Everything I've ever read by him is wonderful. Some of you guys are going to go look him up, and you're going to see that he's a Catholic philosopher, and that's true. But the thing about the Catholics is they don't carry as heavy a stick as maybe the Puritans might, or the evangelicals. They've always got one foot on one of Aristotle's shoulders, and he's a man of reason. And I think that lets somebody like Pieper be a philosopher that everyone can get something from. This is not a book of theology, although there is some of that in it. Also, Karl, I listened to our show this morning.
Yes.
And I realized I don't think I've ever said that our intro and outro music, maybe I've said this, I don't remember it, but it's Gustav Holst, The Planets, and it's Mars, the bringer of war. It's that movement. Mm-hmm. And I sure do like that whole symphony. So if you guys ever wondered what that was, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's worth listening to. I listen to it regularly. It makes excellent workout music.
Yeah.
Jupiter is particularly good. Mm. And actually, one of those is in the Anglican Church. The melody from Jupiter is one of their hymns. They've adopted it. So, they did something right.
Yeah, one thing. Karl, are you up for propaganda next week?
Propaganda? What kind of propaganda?
Edward Bernays' book, 1928 book, Propaganda.
I will have to grab it.
grab it up.
I haven't read it.
It's short. It's 160 pages of big print. Lots of notes in there, so it's not too bad. So if you guys are going to read along with us, go pick up Edward Bernays, Bernays, his book Propaganda. Bernays has been called the Machiavelli of the 20th century. Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He's the father of public relations, spin, and public manipulation. And his nephew is one Mark Bernays Randolph, co-founder of Netflix.
Yeah, so
back to Pieper.
I'm actually in favor of progress. I would like to progress, but I would like to know where I'm going. And so what Pieper claims in this book is that the whole point of civilization, and what I think the whole point of any honest progress ought to be, is leisure. And I really like the first, I think it's 5 chapters, 5 little chapters. It's only 70 pages. It's pretty short.
Heck, it's not even that. It's like 20 pages of lead up.
Yeah, and it's Ignatius. Ignatius always has really wide margins, and it's quick to read. But is leisure immoral?
To some people it is.
I remember, so my wife and I believe Sarah was in utero at the time. So
that's your oldest daughter.
17 years ago. We went to Spain for a vacation. Don't tell anybody, but I may have leaned over and touched the sarcophagus of Christopher Columbus.
Did it burn?
Don't tell the officials. I didn't actually do that. But the thing they do, so this is sort of a, whether it is now or not, leave aside questions of Catholic religion. This is Catholic culture. Okay, so this is the kind of culture that Pieper's writing out of. The weird thing that Spaniards do, or at least that they did when I was there, was for 2 hours in the middle of the day, everybody stops. Nobody does any work. They take a siesta, which feels wrong. It feels dirty to me. You know?
Right.
And then they'd stay up all night at the cafes and at the bars.
One of my friends, he got married, and he and his wife both worked, and they would have dinner late. His father-in-law would say, "You guys have dinner like a bunch of damn Spaniards." Like they wouldn't even eat dinner till like 8:30, you know?
That's the way. Right. And Melissa and I are getting hungry at 5 in the afternoon. You know, we would eat with the old folks at the Old Country Buffet if we could. We like early dinner, and we're just getting hungry, and you can't get any food. You can't sit down and eat. So at least at its ideal, they're not living to work. Or at least that's the perception from the outside. I don't know what a Spaniard would say. They're working so that they can take the time off in the middle of the day, so they can stay up all night with their friends in the plaza.
And this Pieper-style leisure isn't Wagner County, Oklahoma leisure. It's an active engagement in higher things that aren't economic. He contrasts his concept of leisure with idleness. He doesn't want idleness. He says at one point in the book that we talk about people are like, they occupy their leisure time now. But he said the Greeks used to say that you would work your leisure. This leisure has a purpose, and we'll talk about what Pieper says the purpose should be here in a little bit. But it's not just laying about. It's about disengagement from the economic activity, because the economic activity can really only be economic, and there should be a higher purpose.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was inspired by your little Festivus rant on another podcast. And so I was saying things that I thought were true, like I'm upset at John Legend. Like, who in the world? He's a singer. Who calls yourself John Legend? That's just stupid. I'm Karl Awesome.
I like that. What about Ben Mann?
But that's his real name.
Was dude.
Yeah. But one of my complaints is, don't you dare make fun of Bob Ross.
Right.
Bob Ross, for those of you who don't know, you can look him up. He had a show on, was it weekly?
I think so, on PBS, yeah.
He would just paint. Then he would teach you to paint.
The very soft-spoken man with the big afro, and he would paint the nice trees.
Yeah.
And he had this impressionist style of paint that he could just whip out with like big brushes and spatulas.
It was meditative.
Yep.
And you end up, by the end of the half hour, if you followed along with him, you've got a painting. You've made something beautiful. And people want to make fun of it. And I think the people who want to make fun of it, like, who in the world's going to sit and do that? what a waste of time. But if you work and then you get home and you go out to your studio and you stumble your way through making some happy little trees and maybe a mountain in the background and who knows what's going on. And is there a little cabin there? I think there's a little cabin there. You've done something. You've done something just for the sake of doing it. And if you do that, you have touched the leisure that Pieper's talking about.
And creating something like that is something only humans can do. So that's really important that we do those things. He puts forth here on the second paragraph, I think he spells out what his project here is. So maybe I picked wrong. Let me know here, Karl. He says, whenever our task carries us beyond the maintenance of a bare existence and the satisfaction of our most pressing needs, once we are faced with reorganizing our intellectual and moral and spiritual assets, then, before discussing the problem in detail, a fresh start and new foundations call for a defense of leisure. So he's saying, hey, we got the food, the shelter, and stuff taken care of here, and we're faced now, after this Industrial Revolution, with reorganizing our intellectual, moral, and spiritual assets. But before we need to do that, we need to talk about leisure.
Mm-hmm. Well, what if you didn't?
Well, you get what we got, the world of total work. You have to defend leisure, it'll go away, because the things we don't fight for, we lose.
Right. Right. So I think he was writing at the end of after the war.
I think it was 48.
So they're rebuilding everything. And you got to work hard. And he's a German, and they had that thing where they were going to work hard. I've experienced some of that in my family. Like I come home and I'd say to my dad, I got 97% on the test. And you know what his answer would be?
What happened?
Yeah. What went wrong? Why didn't you get 100? Well, Dad. So I do that with my kids now. But yet, what are we working for? What is the point of our society in general? Is it just, and I know this is a word for you, is it just to increase our gross national product? Is that the telos, the goal to which we're all working? Greater efficiency. It's fun to talk to an economist and say, define efficiency, and see if they can do it without it being a circle in the end.
Pieper says, and he leans on the Greeks a lot here. He says, the Greeks say, we are unleisurely in order to have leisure. Like, our mom and dads didn't do that things that mommy and daddies do when they love each other very much so we could be here and work all of our damn days. That's not why we were put here.
Yeah.
We're not. I mean, I hope not. Wouldn't that be awful?
I want to have children so that they may become economic units. Here, I'm going to be controversial here.
I like that. Controversial Karl's my favorite, Karl.
Yeah, I usually keep it under wraps, but very many people nowadays do not have children. A whole lot of them have animals. Okay.
I like animals.
I like them too. They taste very good. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a bad joke. But when you go to the pet store, which you probably shouldn't do, when you go to the breeder of the particular kind of breed that you get, maybe some fancy cat, you're going to get a Russian blue cat. Do you get that animal so that it may work and produce economic value for you? Is that your dream for your little pug or your little Russian blue or
your alpaca?
Alpaca's not a dog.
No.
But that's not the vision you have for your pet. Is it the vision you have for your children? I want to have children. They have to have a career. They have to make money. They have to be economic units,
And here people would normally say, I want them to be successful.
Yeah, but you don't care if your pet is successful.
No.
So why are you putting this burden on your kid?
Yeah, and baked into that successful thing is all this economic stuff that you're talking about. You and I have a mutual friend who I was speaking to at a coaches conference I went to, and he was there with his wife, and she was talking about her career. And I just had a hissy fit. I was like, I don't want to hear about it. We don't have a career. We just have a series of jobs that we, where we go and we swap our skills and our time for something, for value. And by and by, hopefully your skills and your value go up and you get more in exchange for the time you put in. And taken in aggregate, people will call that whole process of escalating value of the person a career. You're just working so you don't lay in the rain and you have food. She's like, before I have kids, I really want to work on my career. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what your career is, and neither do you. It's kind of like you and The Economist, like, what's efficiency? Like, what's your career? Well, your career is you going to work Monday.
Well, we have a word for it, and so we think it's a thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with the Greek word, hypostatized. We've made it into a person. Like the career becomes a thing rather than, it's the word we call that loose collection of jobs that you have from age 16 till 72.
They throw dirt on you.
Yeah.
When people say career, I think it gives them a feeling that they own something. Like, oh, I may get fired from this job, but I still have my career. So I have these certifications, I have these skills, and I'm marketable, and I can get another job. It makes them feel like they have a little more agency in the thing. I just don't think it's true. And Pieper says that all of this language is part of what he calls this world of total work. Everything's work.
Mm-hmm. Even when you go home and you take your shoes off and you sit down and you turn on your favorite streaming movie service, just say no. Don't even do that. But, you sit down, you flip on your movie. Is this leisure or is this recharging your batteries so that you can work better?
Yeah, he says that Labor Day is only good in juxtaposition to work, and most of our other holidays too. Let's talk more about leisure.
Uh-huh.
Now, he says that most of what we do when we work are servile arts.
Right.
They serve a purpose.
Uh-huh.
You're making barrels, you're a wheelwright, you're a blacksmith, you're an accountant, and it serves a purpose. It's servile. That word is kind of poison now. It almost sounds derogatory, but for Pieper, it's not. And for Emerson from last week, servile arts are wonderful.
Yeah, you better have them.
You better have them. It keeps us dry and healthy.
I'm doing a boys club for some of the kids at our church, and so I did the highfalutin theology the last time, and the guy says to me, and he owns a landscape business, and he's more of a salt of the earth kind of guy than I am, and he says, you know what we ought to do next time? Let's teach them how to change the oil.
Yep.
I'm like, yes, absolutely. Servile arts are important. You got to know them. They help you live, but what's the point of them? Do you live to change oil?
Hope not.
Or you change the oil so that you can drive to the concert or drive to your fortress of solitude, whatever. You do that so that you can have the other stuff. And maybe so that you can have money to do the other stuff, because leisure requires a little money.
It does. It certainly requires plenty. Maybe not cash, but you need to have canned enough food that you don't have to hunt for 2 or 3 days while you work on this new French horn.
Yeah.
Because the French horn is useless.
Right.
It belongs to the liberal arts. It's not a servile art. It doesn't keep people healthy.
Right.
It doesn't provide us food or shelter. In terms of utility, it's useless. And he says that's where the humanity is.
Yep, you're right. So you said that servile is a poison word. Useless is a poison word.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. All of the best things in your life, dear listener, if you'll think about it, all of the best things in your life are useless.
I'm holding my jar full of pipe tobacco.
Yeah.
My pipe. And this book.
Yeah.
They're not putting bread on the table,
I haven't yet gotten to them. I have a couple of manuals on how to play bridge.
Yeah.
Bridge is completely useless. I'm not playing bridge to make my mind better. I'm playing it because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's useless. You don't kiss your wife because it serves a purpose.
Au contraire. You don't do it the way I do it, Karl, apparently.
Well, it can't always serve a purpose. Sometimes it's just affection. You don't give affection to serve a purpose. If you're doing that, then your friendship isn't the right kind of friendship.
So, making Pieper's point, or trying to, work is related to the servile arts, and they have definite purpose that's related really to the economic and really survival. And there's nothing wrong with that, but life shouldn't be, the totality of life shouldn't be just that. We need the liberal arts as well, and the liberal arts don't have those practical applications. And I don't know if that's actually true. I don't really buy that from him, but that's what he says. But Those are the things that only humans can do, and they are divine and they're distinctly human. He says that we have the ratio part of the mind and the intellectus part of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
The liberal arts, those more useless arts, come from the intellect, right?
Yeah, so let's try to figure out what that is. So do you have the same edition I have, the Ignatius Press one?
Yes,
yes, you do. So I can just call out page numbers. So what he calls the characteristic activity of leisure. So leisure's not inactivity. It's activity, but it's a kind of activity. And the word for it is contemplation.
Yep.
The Greek word for this is theoria, theory. Well, anyway, so on page 26, right in the middle of the page, to contemplate, on the other hand, to look in this sense means to open one's eyes receptively to whatever offers itself to one's vision, and the things seen enter into us, so to speak, without calling for any effort or strain on our part to possess them. You have to sit and look at the thing and let it be what it is.
He describes this contemplation in a reaction to the idea of intellectual work. Like in the total work economy,
Mm-hmm.
in the total work world, he doesn't actually say economy, in the world of total work, even intellection has become economic because now we have what he calls intellectual workers. He wrote this before Peter Drucker invented the word that we all use, the term we always use now, knowledge worker. Mm. We would say knowledge worker now. He calls it an intellectual worker, and he does not like that they're trying to economize or to make intellectual work economic. He wants it to be contemplative and part of the intellect and divine and distinctly human.
Right. And so you sit there and you do this thinking and you don't know where it's going to go and you're being receptive, and it doesn't necessarily, I think it probably will. I mean, it'll probably help your bottom line. You'll probably be better at your other stuff if you do this, but I don't really care. You know, the activity is worth doing on its own. In my time in the academy, okay, so in my time in the university.
That's the name of your book, My Time in the Academy by Karl.
Yeah, so let's see. When my dad went to a Catholic school, and I think he had to take 4 philosophy and 4 theology. I think I maybe had to take 3. And in the time when I taught, which was about 20 years, it went down to maybe 1.
And these are for engineers, by the way, right?
Well, it was for everybody at that particular school. But then the other school where I taught, which was originally a liberal arts school, also a Catholic school, the requirements to study anything that wasn't job-related keep shrinking.
Yep.
And eventually they're going to go away. And the defenses that are made of it, because you have to defend it. You have to defend leisure, but they don't defend leisure the right way. I would say, look, it's the best activity of a human being. This is what we're here for. All the rest of this stuff is servile. It's good, but we're here for the sake of the philosophy. And it's not just philosophy. We're here for history. We're here for art. We're here for music. We're here for all of this stuff. The work stuff is for the sake of that.
The humanities.
The human itties, yeah. I told you, I like the German word for that. Die Geisteswissenschaften. I probably pronounced that wrong, but it's the soul sciences or the spirit sciences, to be more accurate. But the way they try to defend it, critical thinking. We're teaching critical thinking. No, you're not. Because critical thinking is for a purpose. In other words, the only reason to take a philosophy class is so you can go to the biology class and read the text better.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts. That's not what it's for. Biology is biology. Philosophy is just because it's good.
It's the love of knowledge.
Yeah.
He attacks Kant here, which I love. Kant is, if I'm not mistaken, Lutheran, right?
Yes.
Luther and Calvin, I don't know Luther and Calvin well enough, but, we say idle hands are the devil's workshop, That comes from this era and probably from the Germany of Kant. And Kant, he is not okay with this contemplative mind. He doesn't like that. And he thinks that work has to be done, and that if you have knowledge that doesn't come from work, it's not legit. The knowledge has to be hard gotten to validate it.
We still have this in our thinking. We just had this in a seminar the other night. We were talking about Aristotle and virtuous versus continent or incontinent, which means you do things you do the right thing and it's easy versus you do the right thing but you had to struggle. And the people in the seminar, most of us tend to think the guy who struggled is more admirable.
I was laying in bed the other night. We just legalized medical marijuana in the state of Oklahoma not too long ago.
We've legalized recreational in Illinois starting January 1st.
Yeah. And a lot of people would say that freedom in Oklahoma increased as a result. But I don't think that's true. I think choice increased. Because I think that freedom is the ability to pursue the excellent in an unencumbered way. There's one way to be excellent or good, but there are all kinds of ways to be bad. Like if there is a highest good, there's one highest good. And there are lots of things that are short of that. Right? If there is an excellence of human activity, there are many, many things that are not that. And when, if I'm driving down the road and I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old in the car and we're driving down the road and there's a billboard about marijuana up there, I don't really, and my kids can read at 4 or 5 years old, I don't really want to have a conversation about weed with my 5-year-old right now. It's just not time. A lot of people say, it's never too early to start talking about. But my ability to have myself and my children pursue that which is excellent is diminished by the presence of that. I'm less free to live the life of virtue and good as a result of all of the choice.
Well, I don't know that it's... Okay. So if we're going to hold up leisure as an ideal, which I am, at the end of seminars, I've been thanking the people for honoring us by spending their leisure with us. And I mean it every time I say it, because it is an honor that they share it with us. It's precious, and it's the best time of your life. But if leisure is the chief good, then a whole lot of stuff becomes distraction.
And the leisure isn't idle, but the medical marijuana or the recreational marijuana is.
Well, let's go back to what you were talking about. And Pieper mentions the total worker. Well, the total worker requires the total consumer. Okay? So there's a whole lot of people that are really looking to steal your time.
Man.
And get your money for it.
They monetize views.
Yeah. It's designed to never let you go. It's designed to never let you go. These damn phones, I'm sorry, that just ping you all the time. And I say, I got to have one because I've got 7 Slack channels to monitor and I got to be in touch. Yeah, but the thing is sucking my lifeblood.
Yeah.
And it's by design. It's not an accident. It's not a flaw of my character. It is a flaw of my character, but it's a design feature of the phone.
They prey on that imperfect part of us that also makes us human.
Yeah, and they're sucking your leisure away.
There's some gamma right now saying, listen to these guys talk about this, and here they are on a podcast, and they know that we listen on our phones. Here's the thing that you don't realize, Gamma. Karl and I would have this conversation anyway. You're just getting to eavesdrop. The only thing that's about this podcast that's really not organic is that we actually put it on the calendar.
Right.
Because every time we end up talking, it's just like this, except it's probably dirtier. But it's pretty much just like this. So my pursuit of the excellent, for me, the ability to pursue that which is excellent in an unencumbered way, if that's what freedom is, and I think it is for me today here on the 5th, all of this work gets in the way of that. And he talks about this intellectual work, and that made me think about, have you heard people talk about emotional work?
Yeah.
Have you heard that term? Women are asked to do too much of the emotional work in the relationship in marriage. They say that that's an oppressive thing. And, it could be. I've seen people that didn't leave the emotional wood pile as tall as they found it. Mm-hmm. Those people are out there. I get it. But it's not work. It's called being in a relationship with people. When you're sad, I'm sad. When you're sad, I want to buoy you up.
You've got one way of looking at the world, and your way of looking at the world is economic.
It's total work. Everything's work. Everything's an imposition.
Yeah. Might we say that this is something Marx was right about?
100%.
Well, I would like to break out of that. There's work, let's make a nice, clean distinction. And I've got a great idea. Let's call one batch of stuff servile or mechanical. Mechanical's less, although the accountant is also doing mechanical work, I think. And then we have the liberal arts, the free things, the things that you do that you don't have to do, but nevertheless are the best things to do. Make a clean distinction, realize what's what, and realize that one of them's for the sake of the other. And keep that distinction really, really strong. And then when you're out in Wagner County, Oklahoma, doing your local politics, you can say, how does this serve the liberal arts?
The higher good, the best of man. And we need our poop hauled away. Like sewers are great.
Sewers are great so that you don't have dysentery, so that you can live long enough to read a book.
Yeah. So in the leisure thing, this thing about Kant and Pieper, I just love it so much. Pieper says that in this leisure, we need to have this active contemplation. We need to work our leisure. And of course, if it's a world of total work, total economic work, you don't have any leisure. There's no opportunity for it. But we need to work our leisure, and we need to have this active contemplation, because for Pieper, he says, our knowledge, in fact, includes an element of non-activity, of purely receptive vision. That's my experience of it. You work your leisure. You study this book, you study these ideas, and then you have these aha moments. And I don't have anything to do with the aha moments. It's just it's like a glass rod breaks, and then you've got it. Like there's a part of the human that brings us in touch with knowledge that you can't push, right? I can't crank the lever hard enough. I can't push hard enough. To understand the integral, right? Yeah. But it comes and it goes click. Kant doesn't have room for that.
There's that quote on 27. So apparently, I hadn't read this letter before of Kant. I've read a fair amount of Kant. Do you know he invented the nebular theory of star formation?
I did not know that.
That's one of his early works.
If he invented that, it must not be true. Now I'm skeptical about it.
Are you a firmamenter?
I am anti-Kantian. I am anti-Kantian way more than I'm anti-Marx. I am very, very sympathetic to the problems that Marx points out.
Yeah.
I think he nails the problems. I think he hits them right on the head. And then he and I would arm wrestle about, how to go about it. But, our friend Emmett Penny, he and I, we just shake hands all the way down the road on all the troubles. And then we differ a little bit on how to fix them, but not much.
Yeah, I concur on that.
Horseshoe theory. I'm super far right. He's super far left. And we meet in the back.
Right. Behind the chevron.
Yep.
So Kant is writing it. Apparently the Romantic Revolution in Europe had happened. So the Romantics really, really wanted, they weren't like romantic, like lovey-dovey. Yeah, they wanted to experience things. My thought on this, people used to have riots at classical music concerts. They used to feel things so strongly. And this is what the Romantics were all about. Kant's like, he doesn't like this. This is a guy that would go for walks twice a day. People would set their watch by when Kant left his door. He never left Königsberg. He's a stick in the mud. He's one of the first academic philosophers, professor philosophers.
I wish you guys could see my face. My face is just sore from frowning about this guy.
Can you be an academic philosopher? That's a good question. This is the bottom page 27. Opinions, he says, such as those of the Romantics, the sense that philosophy was above work, have been responsible for the new superior tone in philosophy, a pseudo-philosophy, and this is Kant, in which there is no need to work. One only has to attend to the oracle in one's breast and enjoy it, and so possess that wisdom whole and entire, which is the end of philosophy. So he's making fun of it, that these people would just, you can imagine Byron sitting somewhere in an opium den writing, she walks in beauty like the night or something, and Kant going, crap,
right.
Scheisse. These hippies, that are trying to recover something of the beauty of creation.
I mean, there's something joyless about Kant. If he's right, I, for one, am going to choose to ignore that. I think it's better to live as though... I think it's better to live as Byron than as Kant.
You know which team I'm on. I'm on team poetry. We were talking about Wagner earlier. It's like Act 2 of Tristan and Isolde, and nothing happens. They stand on a stage and they stare at each other, and it's glorious. And you're sitting in the audience listening to nothing happen. And it's just wonderful.
Kant never married. I mean, he's the original incel. Screw that guy.
He's going to be on our reading list eventually.
I know, and I need to read it, and I need to try to be generous.
But let's leave him aside for now.
But he's the anti-leisure.
Yeah.
So we can leave him aside, but a professor near you, a thinker near you, is influenced by Kant. He's a big deal. These German idealists are a big deal, and he's the axle the whole evil wheel turns on, and this idea of intellectual work, I don't think it could come about without the guy.
I think if we dug into Kant more, the notion of the noumenon and the phenomenon is probably, because that's deadly to contemplation. Okay, so a little sketch of that. The phenomena are the thing that are in the perceiver, and they appear to you in a set of categories, wherever he got the list of his categories from, and you never actually get to the thing itself. The thing itself is inaccessible. Okay, if that's the case, then contemplation dies.
Right.
Because what's the point? I'm just contemplating myself then.
Yeah, and this is a line of thought that only a childless, wifeless, loveless dude could have.
Well, I don't know that I can psychoanalyze him.
I'm not sure I can't. Kant.
Can't you? I know he liked mustard. A little.
It looks like it. Go look at a woodcut engraving of the guy's face. It's clear he did. He talks about Herculean work in terms of the philosopher. Like, it just has to be work, and it has to be non-intuitive, non-numinous.
Mm-hmm.
And that just sets us up, and he probably didn't intend this. The guy's probably not evil, or if he's evil, he wasn't aware of it. He was a tool. But this whole idea sets us up for even the thinking that we might do in leisure time to be turned into work. And Karl, when I was reading this, I was just thinking about me. I turn all these things I love into jobs. I mean, online great books. It's just, I like teaching people how to move properly so they can be stronger and they can engage in the world better. And I did that for my friends and family and so on. I turned that into a job. I'm the world's worst at about this. I can't leave it alone and do it for what it is.
I think we need to have an intervention.
Please save me.
To schedule 2 hours in your day. That cannot be a job.
A shoots test.
And I don't care what you do.
I take a nap, but that's strictly rest. Like, for him, leisure isn't rest. It doesn't recharge the battery.
You have to be awake.
Actively awake.
Maybe you can't do 7 days a week. Maybe do 1 day a week. There's 2 hours on your calendar. Phone gets shut off. Who knows? You might end up Bob Ross. I think that'd be good. I think we probably have to schedule leisure these days.
For sure.
And make it happen. I want to talk about, so in section 3, he talks about acedia, which is sloth, which is not the same thing as leisure.
Can I wrap up one piece in two?
You can do whatever you like.
I'm sorry, but I want to get to acedia. But he hearkens to Thomas, and he says that the essence of virtue consists in the good rather than in the difficult. So, I do another podcast with a guy named Matt Reynolds, and he loves this idea of this voluntary hardship of being refined by doing hard things.
Yeah.
He loves that idea. And I think when we works, and when we rest. Like, I think when it's time to work, we need to hit it and take it deadly serious. And then when we're done, we're absolutely done, and we take our gloves off, and we wash up, and then it's time for the other part of us. But not for Reynolds, and not for modern Western life.
You're either working or you're resting so that you can work.
Yep, and you play hard. You work hard, you play hard, right? It's Jocko Willink, it's rise and grind, and then our hobbies, we're jumping out of airplanes. I mean, everything has to be extreme. But he says not everything that is more difficult is necessarily more meritorious. It must be difficult in such a way that is the same time good in a higher way. And sometimes the good is a harder thing. On the back of our Online Great Books t-shirts, they say, the noble things are difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But are they difficult, or is it just difficult to be noble?
Well, or do we like them because they're good, or do we like them because they're difficult? The difficulty, I think, I like the voluntary hardship thing. I think it's a necessary thing for a lot of people.
I do too.
To learn that you got to do hard stuff. But we're not doing the hard stuff because it's hard. We're doing the hard stuff because of the good. And when you get good at it, it's not as hard.
I think holding that in our mind would help us keep our leisure from being merely laying on our ass.
Mm-hmm.
In our leisure time, we could watch Netflix. Or we could read Pieper.
Yeah. So, acedia, or sloth. The essence of acedia is the refusal to acquiesce in one's own being. He's got Thomas's definition of it. I'm circling around this, and I'll talk about what it is.
How continental.
Yeah, I know.
Acedia is the despair from weakness.
It's sadness that overwhelms him when he's confronted with the divine goodness immanent in himself. That's from Thomas Aquinas. So it's not being lazy, although being lazy is a result of it. You might actually work really, really hard and be subject to this kind of sloth. So I had to think about this. So Pieper thinks that sloth and idleness do not go together necessarily.
He thinks really hard work is slothful.
Yeah.
I wrote that down in here. I've had a hard time getting my mind around that. Check my work.
Okay.
People use hard work to avoid the contemplation, to avoid the introspection, and to avoid looking at that which hides.
Yes. I think your work is pretty good.
And in that way, it's sloth.
Yeah, let me give an example, a couple of examples. So back in the days when we used to listen to the radio and I used to teach students, I actually taught a Josef Pieper book. He's got a whole book on contemplation. When you drive home, because they're mostly commuter students, turn the radio off. And they're like, what? Just turn it off. Just have it be silent. It's like, put the phone away.
I just bought a new Ford F-250 pickup truck, Karl.
Cool.
Do you know that you cannot buy a Ford F-250 with no radio?
Do we need to take the radio out?
Well, if it wasn't for the hole in the dash, I'd be all for it.
Trade it out for an 8-track?
I have one Don Williams 8-track tape I would just have running all day, every day in there. The Gentle Giant, Don Williams. People use hard work to avoid that human work, which we should be doing, which is Pieperian leisure.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily always going to be hard work. It might just be busyness. And he does some etymology on the words for leisure. I know the Latin one. I didn't know the Greek one that he's talking about. Otium, O-T-I-U-M, is leisure in Latin. The word for busyness is negotium. Not leisure. So when you're negotiating, it means you're not leisuring. It's defined in the negative. It's like there's no positive reality that it's talking about. It's just, I'm not doing what a human ought to do. I'm doing the not leisure. And we fill that time up because you can't have leisure time. Because leisure time, what happens in leisure time is you sit down and you think, and it's like is it Nietzsche who said, you stare at the abyss looks back?
If you sit down and think, you might realize your marriage is awful. Or that your mother hated you from the day you were born. Or, darkness creeps in. Yeah, you don't know. We have some really good friends who we've vacationed with and who I like very, very much. They have 2 boys that are the age of my daughters, and I like those boys very, very much. And his boys call him... He works really hard. He's a very good provider, and he's a good father. But sometimes he's a little inaccessible. And the boys call him Busy Brent. And it's sort of funny, but it's sort of not.
Yeah, so if you are threatened by idleness, by actual... No, that's not right. If you're threatened by leisure, then you might be suffering from what they called acedia.
Yeah, a despair from weakness is what Kierkegaard called it, or despairing refusal to be oneself.
Yeah. You're capable of great things, and when you sit in the quiet, you might realize, I could be doing some great things, and I don't want to.
Despair from weakness. You know what I thought? I wrote right here. Soy. Like, how many angsty, sort of weak young people do you see? And it's clear to me, like when I was a young person, when Reagan was the president and the first Bush, I went to school with a cohort of people. I was thrown in with people, and I could observe people my age. And almost everybody did stuff. They were engaged in things. This guy liked to fish and hunt, and somebody was in the FFA, and somebody played football, and Susie did whatever she did. But everybody kind of did stuff, and there was some angst. But young people were not as rageful and angsty and disaffected. And teenage people mostly have leisure, despite what they think. They really do. They may have to study, but it's like forced contemplation.
They have time.
They have time.
Whether they have genuine leisure is another thing.
In 1988, we had leisure that we could do useful things with. I didn't see the sort of angst and the anger. 4chan would be very quiet had it existed in 1988.
It did. It was like a dial-up bulletin board.
Right. I used to do that. But I see that despair from weakness. Like if people are kind of ineffectual and they feel they are an economic unit and that they can't make real effect with their leisure, or they don't have leisure, they can't find expression for that which is them. Like if you're doing the economic thing, it's not very expressive of the self. It can be a little bit, but it's not like painting a painting like Bob Ross would do. And in that, the people experience weakness and they experience a despair. That's what, when I read that, that's what it made me think. When he talks about that hard work can be slothful, and he says that among some, they can have a deep-seated lack of calm, which makes leisure impossible. That's at the bottom of page 45. And I circled that, and I can have problems with that. That can be me. Not every day. Maybe most days.
Yeah.
A deep-seated lack of calm. And when politics, when the public, when the job life is clamorous and noisy, it can really make it very difficult for us to have that calm. And so if you even have an opportunity for leisure, because we live in the world of total work, you might find that you have a lack of calm when you have the opportunity for the leisure. So they even creep into the opportunity for leisure. Damn it.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier we have ratio and intellectus, two cool Latin words to deal with the mind.
It's like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. when you and I write our new anti-federalist papers, you can be ratio and I'll write as intellectus.
Well, but intellectus is going to have all the best lines because he's going to deal with the eternal.
Right.
Oh, I see what you did. So genuine leisure is going to deal with, it sounds Platonic, it's going to deal with eternal things. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's related to this lack of calm that, I got to check Twitter. I got to see what's trending. I got to, see all of that stuff. It's yuck. It's distraction. Shut it down. Look, Beethoven, I told you I've been listening through Beethoven.
It's a good project.
And I'm up to Opus 71 now, but I got stuck on Symphony number 5 and number 6. They're right next to each other in the Opus number. They're just so good. They're so good. I listened to them and I listened to them again. I probably listened to 5, 10 times. You got to get past movement 1 because after that it really picks up. It doesn't matter what the Congress does. Beethoven is still Beethoven. It can get you calmer when you realize the things that are the best in life are, and I'm thinking of Conan right now, but the things that are best in life are unchanging things.
Unchanging.
It would be better for you if your focus was on that sort of thing. Whether it makes your job better or not, it's just better stuff to do.
This is one of my hobby horses. this loss of leisure. I mean, we've talked about this before. Hopefully everybody's seen Maslow's little hierarchy of needs, that pyramid, and at the bottom is food and stuff. Like the very, very basic. And above that's, I think, safety. And then you've got like spiritual needs, emotional needs, I think is what it is. I'm doing this from memory. I can't remember. And the very tip top, though, is self-actualization. The promise was that our basic needs were met, nitrogen, fertilizer, vaccines, the good times are coming. Okay, World War II's over. Peace dividend. Like the security's done. Berlin Wall fell, nuclear disarmament, the security stuff. Okay, we got that, and then we could move up the hierarchy of needs, which are distinctly human. Cattle don't have a need for self-actualization, Somehow it was stolen from us. They just swiped the capstone off of the pyramid for us, and we can't get there because they continue to push us back down the damn pyramid.
Did you ever see the movie WALL-E?
No.
I know you don't like movies. I heard that on a different podcast this morning, that you don't like movies. WALL-E's a Pixar thing, and it's got the people on the spaceship, and they sit in chairs all the time. And all they do is move from one distraction to another. They eat lunch out of a cup. The autopilot on the ship is telling the captain, you're safe. You don't need to do anything. You're safe. And the captain says something like, I don't want to survive. I want to live. And he wants to go and plant a plant and be a farmer and do something. Everything's provided for, but there's nothing worth doing. Does that make sense?
When I was a kid, I was just fascinated with Star Trek. Like I was probably, I'm not a Trekkie. Like I haven't even watched all the episodes. But I think the first time I saw it was probably like 4 years old. And it was on at like 10:30 at night. But their needs are met, They didn't even get paychecks. They just push a button and the food would come out, and then they could all do the thing they cared about. Scotty could work with machines. He was an engineer, and he loved those machines.
What did Kirk care about?
Kirk cared about his crew, I think.
And alien women.
Well, for sure. For sure. But they all got to pursue their interest. I mean, they had active leisure because the economic stuff was taken care of. Safety, is a space western, safety stuff had to come and go every now and then from episode to episode. But I remember thinking it was going to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, why hasn't it? I think little chapter 4 and 5 is where we can find some answer to this. At least to Pieper's answer. So why didn't it work? Now that we have material needs for the most part met, things are a lot better on the physical plane. That's for sure. You don't die of the... Look, 21 million people died of the flu after World War I.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And that the population was a lot smaller then. That's a whole lot of people. That'd be a lot of people now. We don't usually have that happen. Most people live longer. Medicine's great. A whole bunch of cancers you can have treated that you couldn't have back then. So a lot of things are better in the physical realm. And yet depression is up, suicide is up in the best of times. Percy talks about this all the time. Why is it in the best of times people are so sad? In chapter 4, Pieper asks the question, is humanism enough?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You ask what happened, and I think it's a failure of philosophy. We don't have our minds right. We value the wrong thing. Yeah.
Well, this is going to get, I don't know. I mean, it might get a little controversial because he's going to get slightly religious. Hold on. You better buckle up. He talks about leisure generally happens in the presence of a celebration, and a celebration is going to be a religious celebration.
Festivals.
Yeah. Holidays. It even has it in the name. Holy days. Holidays. Labor Day doesn't work.
No.
Because it's just a circle back and celebrate labor. It's got to be something else. And I was trying to think about that. If you're not a fellow traveler, if you are, you're going to say, oh yeah, church holiday is great. But if you're not, how can you understand this? In order to have permission to have genuine leisure, you've got to think that there's something to have leisure about. If it's contemplation, there's got to be capital T truth. There's got to be something out there. Does that make sense? I can't just gaze at my navel.
Yeah, it's just scat if you're doing that. You're just making shit up.
So I have my note. This is not Pieper. This is me. Heidegger says only a God can save us. Well, too bad he didn't believe in them. So he had no place to look. Even Kant, even our friend Immanuel Kant, in his Ethics, he doesn't think you can prove that there's a God. And given where he started, he's probably right to say that. At least he's consistent to say that. But in the practical realm, you have to presuppose that there's one, or you don't get where he wants to go in ethics, which is to have absolute moral laws. Let's just call it capital B, being. There has to be being, okay? And so you could make your festival of being, where you're just you have an excuse to contemplate. It's not at the service of the state. It's not at the service of your job. It's not a company picnic. It's the festival of being. We're going to do it every, when should we have the festival of being?
October 11th.
Why October 11th?
Because that's my birthday.
Okay, I was going to suggest your birthday. I'm glad we're on the same page. So October 11th, the Feast of Being. What are you going to do on it? Well, we're not going to work.
Right, we're not going to work. We're definitely going to eat.
Yeah, and we have permission not to work.
We have a reason to not work. We have to schedule things, remember?
Mm-hmm.
We need a reason.
Maybe can there be a poetry slam at
Sure.
the Festival of Being?
Yeah, there could be a poetry slam, and there can be R&B music.
Very good. Who's that slide guitarist that you like?
Oh, Robert Randolph and the Family Band.
Invite him up for the Festival of Being. Could make T-shirts.
As a fellow traveler, but not a Catholic, I was thinking about Thanksgiving. That's a distinctly American holiday. Hadn't been around that long either. It's 100 years old or something like that. I think people kind of informally would do Thanksgiving, but as like a federal holiday, I could go. Somebody's going to correct me on it, but it's a newish thing. 100 years old, 120 years old, something like that. What are you giving thanks to? I mean, who do you offer the thanks to? Like, I think it's a good thing to do, right? It's almost at the end of the year. All the harvests ought to be in. We're not agricultural people so much anymore, but all the harvests ought to be in, and the year is coming to the close. Christmas is coming up, so we're not fixing to, launch any new initiatives between Thanksgiving and the new year. It's probably a good time to take stock, and it's, I think, almost anyone, atheist, secularist, Catholic, Hebrew, whatever, would say taking stock and being thankful would be a good thing to do. Who do you think?
I don't think it works as well if you thank each other.
Thank your wife, your customers, the kids for not going to jail and needing bail money.
We have a mutual friend I think he's a Buddhist, actually, to the extent that he has a religion. He mentioned to me once that he has this little bit of mysticism about him, that looking around, everything is grace. This is a non-believer kind of a guy, but still grace means gift in Latin, that everything is a gift. Where'd it come from? I don't know, but it's a gift. You didn't make it, it's a receptivity. And we can make it impersonal if that makes you feel better, or it makes it more accessible. That's why I like Festival of Being. Thanks, being. Mm-hmm. Everything that you have came from outside of you, and it ought to fill you with wonder and awe. And some sort of attitude of receptivity to that and gratitude that's the genuine holiday.
Have you seen people talk about non, G-N-O-N?
G-N-O-N. No, I have not.
It's a sort of secular notion of their non is this higher is this power. This is like where things come from. Nature, it's backwards. It would be nature or nature's God is what they said.
Oh, I get it.
So there are these people that are notionally, atheists or whatever on 4chan, and they're like, look at this, and they talk about non. And it started kind of being funny, but it's not anymore. There's a Twitter account I follow called The Wrath of Non. And the guy that, I don't know who it is, that runs the little account, he's really interested in what he calls human scale urban planning. So he posts a lot of pictures of he lives in Japan, of these small, these small villages in Japan that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. and how well they work and how they just aid in human flourishing. He's really interested in all that stuff. Non. Anyway, so people talk about non. Adam Carolla. I used to listen to the Adam Carolla podcast every day. Adam Carolla talks about the great magnet. Like he'll just straight up say he's an atheist, but he's like, stuff happens sometimes.
Yeah.
The great magnet. Yeah, I think everybody's got something.
Flannery O'Connor says everything which rises converges, which is a way to think about this. So what would I think? You can't do contemplation without an idea that there's some sort of hierarchy of being.
A natural law, a natural order.
Some things are better than other things. So Jeremy Bentham famously said, pushpin equals poetry. He's completely wrong. It's not the same thing. Poetry's better, depending on the poet. There are some things better than others. If you've got a hierarchy, well, good. Now you can have the holiday because something's better than you. And there's some permission that you can be given to have a feast and to not work because there's something more important than your work.
And if there's not anything more important than your work, then it's all work. No, really, if there's nothing more important than work. So guys, I'm not sure where I fall on any of this stuff. But if you say to yourself that there's nothing more important than work, then it's all work. And is that what you want? Does that feel right? Like, is your experience of that good? He also says later on in that chapter there that in leisure, we're all leveled out. You're no longer an employee. You're not a master. You're not a slave. In leisure, we're all men.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
This is like Marx here, right? Like, as long as you're working, you're in the power structure.
Yes.
Unless you're the one guy, there's always somebody above you. And that's not awesome. I mean, if we're going to build a bridge, somebody's got to be in charge. I get it. But we have to subordinate ourselves to the bridge, to the project. And that's dehumanizing a little bit. But when we're in leisure, we aren't subordinate, at least to other men. It's lovely. We forget that. What's wrong with the Sabbath? The mayor's not the mayor on Sunday. He can't mayor.
Because nobody will do anything.
Nobody will do anything.
Yeah.
So as your Western Karl in Spain, in Seville, on vacation, and you want to get a slushie at 2:30,
Nope. I have to.
You ain't
I'm
the boss
forced.
of me.
Right. You can't make it happen. I would like more things to be closed on Sunday.
Me too. Everything but the power plant and the hospital.
Yeah, we don't need to have another economic day.
Is this show any good?
Is this particular show any good?
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. What do you think?
Me too. But I don't listen to it.
I think it's going to get some people's hackles riled. But
okay, good.
Isn't it cool that in the story of creation, God takes a day off?
Isn't it interesting that after Adam and Eve screw up, they are cursed and punished by work?
Right.
You'll toil all of your days.
Right. And in that whole story, you have the Sabbath, you have the Jubilees. All of these are freedoms from work. And it's baked into this system. It's got to be there or none of it makes sense. In other words, there's more to your life than plowing the field.
How about this? And I keep thinking about the people the secular folk that might be listening. How about this? Wouldn't it just be a good idea anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't hackle up about this because Pieper thinks that there needs to be a divinity that the leisure is focused on and that sanctions the leisure.
See, I think divinity is like essential oils. How much of it do you need? Okay, so if like a little drop will be enough. You just need a little to give you an excuse to take a day off and do better things. Yeah. So some vague sense that somehow the universe has order to it, top to bottom. Okay, good.
Some things are higher than other things.
That's good.
You know,
all is grace. Good enough.
Go read your Pars Prima. If you can order things, something's the highest.
And it's probably not you or your job.
It ain't me. I've got GI problems.
Even though we're going to celebrate the Feast of Being on your birthday?
Yeah. Karl, Can art be created of work? Can you make good art as an economic endeavor? Like we talked about Arthur Conan Doyle, and Dickens writing these stories, getting paid by the letter or by the word. The Pope did pay Michelangelo to do his stuff, but is it work like the economic, transactional stuff that you do as a grocery checker? You exchange an hour for a fixed price. Or is it just that they happen to find a way to get patronage for their leisure? Are they sponsored so that their first two levels of Maslow's hierarchies taken care of, so that they can be this sort of contemplative, leisurely person that creates the useless?
Well, you just opened up another hour and a half.
All right,
for this
I'm game.
podcast. Or maybe we ought to budget it. Okay, so you're Michelangelo, and you're the best sculptor to come around since Phidias. It is not economically useful. Okay, your avocation, your artsiness is not going to pay the bills. So there's kind of a dilemma, but you have to get paid. That's one of the rules of being a musician. You always have to get paid. You don't do it for free, And
it's so difficult because these people that do these things, they do them anyway.
They do them anyway, but you got to get paid. But he required, when did he do all this work? In Renaissance Italy for rich people.
Right.
Who had, through their various economic activities, whether moral or immoral, probably immoral because it's Renaissance Italy, acquired a whole lot of money. So they have the material means to pay to make leisure more beautiful.
So is it real work that he was doing, or were the Borgias underwriting his material needs so that he could be a man of Pieperian leisure?
He needed a patron to be able to do the right kind of stuff.
I think so. I don't think that I don't think that we could go to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and get a big grant and start an art factory and have people come in and they punch the clock and then they, whatever the heck it is, we have an interview process and we find the best artisans and we're going to crank out the new David, or we're going to have a guy, he's going to come in from 9 to 5 and he's going to write Self-Reliance for us, the new.
Now, I want to make a distinction. I bet you we could make a real nice ancient Greek pottery factory. Okay, we're going to recreate the amphora that they used. And we're going to put Achilles on them. We get a design and we work out a procedure.
Those things just display excellence in a servile art, though. They aren't the useless.
You mentioned David. David is completely ridiculous.
Completely ridiculous.
That thing is absurd.
It costs more to maintain David every year than it takes 20 families to live.
But it's glorious.
It's
one of the glories of European civilization that Michelangelo Buonarroti was able to make that thing.
They don't have a civilization, do they? I've read on Twitter that there isn't one.
I don't read on Twitter.
Oh, good.
He needed a whole lot of things to be true for him to be able to do that. We were talking about the French horn in the previous podcast. A whole lot of things need to be true to make that possible. And it's completely absurd and ridiculous. And one of the greatest things there is.
After I thought about this whole problem, I have concluded that you can monetize good art, but it must not stem from an economic motivation. If it stems from an economic motivation, the profitability of the thing or the productivity of the thing becomes the value that drives the art. If it comes from the leisure, the contemplative leisure, it's about what's good.
What about a Jack Reacher novel? He's cranking them out, and he gets paid for them. Is that the work of an artisan or is that art? I don't care that much. It's still fun.
Oh, there's lots of fun. Or, the Holmes stories. I mean, it's art, but is it the highest art? If somebody somehow went to Lee Childs and said, hey, you don't have to worry about anything anymore. I paid your house off. I want to pay all the bills. Lady's going to come and bring groceries every week. And is that what he would write if he had that? I don't know. We can call him and find out. Probably not.
Yeah, just do what you do.
Yeah.
Everything else is taken care of. That's what the Renaissance patrons would do. At least, well,
kind of.
that's what ideally they would do. Apparently the Pope and Michelangelo would have fights.
What's the name of that movie?
Agony in the Ecstasy.
Yeah, Charlton Heston plays Michelangelo. It's great fun. That's a great movie.
Professor Higgins plays the Pope.
Yeah.
All your material needs are taken care of. Go make what you want to make. It's like Willie Nelson, Red-Headed Stranger. He wasn't making it in Nashville. He wasn't making the stuff they wanted to make. He went back to Texas. I'm going to do this. And I was watching the documentary, the country music documentary, the producer saying, you know what, why don't we just release this and then it'll die a quick death and then we'll get Willie to do what we want him to. And they release it and it's on the charts for 3 years and you let the guy go do the thing that he wants to do.
That is a legendary piece of art. The album, The Red-Headed Stranger, if you don't know, go listen to it. Go get it and listen to it in order. It tells a story. The song Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain is from that album, and it ain't what you think it is. When you listen to it in the context of the whole thing, it is not the love song that you think it is. It's just brilliant. And nobody wanted it. He couldn't pitch it. Nobody wanted it. But, his needs were met. He wrote Crazy, and he wrote all those songs, and he's getting royalties. And, he had Campbell's Soup and a place to stay and enough money to pay the band, and his sister's the piano player, and he had the leisure to create that thing. Henry Ford, I think I've said this on the show before. Henry Ford said that if he listened to everyone, he would have just made faster horses.
Yeah.
If you approach things from this economic interest first, you may not get to pursue the excellent as a result of that.
Right.
Now, a lot of people would say, well, he had an economic interest. Henry Ford could not help himself. He was broke. He was building cars and sheds behind his house, and he couldn't help it. He was a tinkerer. He couldn't help it. That stuff was sculpting to him. He could not help himself. But he put lightning in a bottle,
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a Ford 2 weeks ago.
You didn't get a cop car, though.
I didn't. I bought a giant truck. Actually, Charity bought it for me.
Did you get it new or used?
It is a 2019, but somebody drove it since May and then traded it in. So it was about a third off because some Dorcas drove it for 6 months, put 7,000 miles on it.
That's lucky for you.
My wife's the bargain hunter. She found it. What's happening to me, Karl?
What's happening to you?
Yeah, I'm like turning into a Marxist or something.
You know what's happening to you? This is what's happening to you.
Okay, tell me.
You don't believe this, but you have a great big heart.
No, I do.
And it's full of love. And you have a vision of things that you think are better. And you're worried about it.
I'm deeply worried about it. No, that's all true. I want good for all of us. I really do. I don't think that enough of us are worried about getting the good for ourselves. You said, why hasn't this happened? I said that, 35 minutes ago or something like that. It's a problem of philosophy. Like, we don't search for the highest good. If you're the dictator of the Western world and the thing that you look at when you govern are the economic indicators, you're going to get one kind of an outcome. But if you were, if you governed with the highest good in mind for your people, you get a different kind of outcome. And we're just not thinking about it. And I think that we're not even really thinking about even the economic properly. We just changed some laws here in Oklahoma about a year ago. We've got these weird liquor laws down here. From what I understand, Trader Joe's wanted to be able to sell wine in their stores, and it was illegal in Oklahoma. And we govern largely by referendum in the state, and we passed a referendum that now allows wine to be sold in grocery stores and stuff like so much of the country already does. But we used to have our liquor stores were only open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and they were closed on Sundays. They're open Sundays now. Do you think they sell one extra bottle? I bet they don't sell any bottles extra. Like, people were perfectly able to buy 2 bottles on Saturday to get them to Monday. It just cost us as people. Like, now Mr. Parkhill, who runs my favorite liquor store down the road, has to pay his people to be there on Sunday because everybody else is on Sunday.
And the girl behind the counter that when I went there with you, Now she's got to work Sunday.
Mr. Parkhill's poor. She lost her Sunday every other week because she switches with Susan, and nothing happened. Like people still, nobody wasn't getting their wine. We're philosophically broken. We're not thinking about what is best. And when I say what is best, I don't mean like what's a little more pleasurable than the other thing, or literally, legitimately, in the hierarchy of needs. What is the thing that's at the very pinnacle of that which all of us should want? That's the prize. We got to keep our eye on that. That's all Aristotle talks about. That's all he cares about.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we should care about.
That's all Socrates cared about.
Why care about anything else? Hey man, I'm gonna really trench in and dig down on this 10th best shit. What? No.
I think that's right. I think it's even controversial to talk that some things are better than others.
Yeah.
And then you get pushed back.
Yeah.
How dare you say that? Well, because I have a mind and there is reality and I can perceive it. But it's seen as oppressive or something to claim that anything is better than anything else. Well, okay, fine. Have it your way. But if nothing's better than anything else, it's all equally bad.
It's all bad. It's all gray. It's just the goop.
Yeah.
I think that almost anyone agree, except for Matt Reynolds, would agree that work isn't what is best. It's a means to an end. We work so that we can have leisure. And whether you define leisure like Pieper does, or if you just say that the time that you can spend with nothing else to do with your children is leisure. I mean, we work for those things. Clearly. Like, if you're working for work, there's something wrong. You know, I hope that there's a realignment for you and that you find something that's more meaningful to you than your gig. Because if that's the most meaningful thing, there's a hole. And if that's true, if all these things are true, then it means we should make decisions about it. And those decisions would lead us to not have the liquor store open on Sunday. I'm no prude. I don't have any problem. I don't think anybody's going to hell because they bought bourbon on Sunday. I don't have any problem with that. But we're not better off because the liquor store is open on Sunday. You know, and I'm not better off, and this one's a little harder to see, I'm not better off that the hardware store is open on Sunday. So the toilet springs a leak. Turn the water off. You know, maybe we have to go to the bathroom over at the neighbor's house. That might cause me to talk to him and know the people. Like, you know, maybe we'd have to do without for a little while. It's okay.
Would that be voluntary hardship?
No. It would just be getting out of yourself a little bit. It'd just be willing to just slow down a minute. You know, because the thing is, like, maybe you don't work at the liquor store. Maybe you don't work at the hardware store. But it's you. You're next. Like, even if you're a 6-figure employee person or whatever, or own your own business, you carry a phone and they call you all the fucking time.
And they get mad at you if you don't answer immediately.
Well, none of us can put it down. They have access to it. We're getting emails from people and clients at 9:49 p.m. on Saturday evening. You know, I want to help people, but, you know, we need some brighter lines here. We need some brighter lines between our economic activity. They used to have a chicken, what do they say? Chicken in every pot. What was the line?
A chicken in, I think Carter said something like that. Chicken in every pot and something in every garage. I don't remember.
Car in every garage, chicken in every pot. I mean, it's kind of basic. It's a big old country. We kind of need cars. It's a big old place. And chicken, I mean, it's food. But we're way past that, and we continue to grasp. Continue to grasp and reach and drive. Tired of it.
Yeah. Well, what could they do about it?
Create some personal boundaries. Say no more. When we have an opportunity for that leisure, I hate this word. I'm going to use it anyway. Be intentional about its use.
Yeah. I'd say schedule it.
Yeah.
It's going to drive you crazy if you're one of those people. Put it on your calendar. Block out your time. This is leisure. And then I don't care what you do. But it has to be something, whatever you feel like doing at that moment. And it can't be work. It has to be something else. Paint a painting, read a novel, go for a walk, go fishing. something, a little bit that's non-economic, that you're doing just because it's good. Talk to your friends. That counts.
Cards.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons that a pipe is so good, because you can't do anything else because you have to use your hands.
It'll go out too.
Yeah.
Needs to be tended.
Yeah, you just have to sit there. It's good. I'm just too stupid to just sit there. Like, I'd have some reason. You know, I have to have like some chemical in there that I'm addicted to so that it will force me to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
All right. That's Josef Pieper. I really like him. I hope you guys do too. I hope his Catholicness doesn't make anything he said be lost on anyone.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your leisure with us.
Go give us a chance. Go over to onlinegreatbooks.com/OGB podcast and join our little VIP waiting list. Do it even if you don't want to join, because we send you a bunch of stuff. That'd be helpful to us, even if you didn't join, because the more you know about our program, more likely you might be to say something about a friend. We send out some goodies in there that I know that you would find useful. And then for next week, we're going to read Edward Bernays, Bernays, 1928 book, Propaganda. Karl, you want to hear a little blurb off of the cover here?
Sure.
Teasers. Only through the active energy of the intelligent few can the public at large become aware of and act upon new ideas. As civilization has become more complex and as the need for invisible government has been increasingly demonstrated, the technical means have been invented and developed by which opinion may be regimented. Here's another one. These are all bullet points on the cover. Democracy is administered by the intelligent minority who know how to regiment and guide the masses.
That's straight out of Thucydides.
An entire party, a platform, an international policy is sold to the public or is not sold on the basis of intangible element of personality.
This is like going to Hogwarts and learning the defense of the dark arts.
Edward Bernays, the 20th century Machiavelli. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go to iTunes and give us a review. Those are very helpful. And, thanks so much for listening. It's a big deal to me that of all the things that you could potentially listen to and all the voices that you could hear, you've chosen to listen to us. That is an amazing thing to me. But, Karl, I would do this if no one but you listened.
Yeah. You just call me and we'd talk.
Thank you, guys.